What's good? It's Woog. Well, that answers that, doesn't it? Mikey Garcia dared to be great, challenged 147-pound juggernaut champion Errol Spence, and it did not go well. He did not win one round on any of the judges' scorecards, and the fight got so bad and was so lopsided that Robert Garcia, Mikey Garcia's brother/trainer, considered stopping the fight on behalf of his brother/pupil. That was the first Errol Spence fight in several years that actually went the distance. Mikey Garcia, although he's naturally 2 weight classes below Errol Spence, proved to be extremely durable and showed tremendous heart. Again, he didn't win one round, yet he ended up completing that entire 12 rounds. And it wasn't for lack of effort on Errol Spence's part in trying to stop Mikey Garcia. Spence eventually started letting both hands go, repeatedly, going to the body and up top, crushing him to the body before turning the punches up top, anticipating that Garcia was going to try to block low so Spence could then turn the punch up top, trying to knock Garcia out. Again, Garcia persevered, made it the distance. Errol Spence continues his undefeated reign at 147 and is widely recognized as one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the sport, as is Mikey Garcia, by the way. He didn't stand to lose too much because the odds were so skewed in Errol Spence's direction. Some casinos had Garcia as a 6-1 underdog. Garcia doesn't drop in stock in losing this fight to Errol Spence. He just goes back down to either 140 or 135 and continues his career there. Now, in the last video, I mentioned that the jab was going to be the big difference, aside from the size and the power and all that. For all the people who thought that Mikey Garcia had a really good chance at winning this fight, that they would be extremely surprised at how quickly and how often Errol Spence is able to land on Garcia with his jab. A lot of people didn't see Errol Spence as being a tremendous boxer. They thought of him as a slugger because he had such a high KO ratio. But this fight showed how developed a boxer Errol Spence really is. So Garcia really had no answers for Errol Spence's combination of physical gifts and boxing ability, whereas Errol Spence had every answer to anything that Garcia tried to employ against him. So what now? For Errol Spence, sky's the limit. He could take his pick. He summoned Manny Pacquiao into the ring after his victory against Garcia, and Pacquiao seemed to, at least verbally, agree to the fight with Spence. Spence would love that because this is the biggest payday available for him now that Mayweather's retired. Aside from maybe Canelo, Spence-Canelo would be a blockbuster smash. But aside from the inevitability of Spence eventually moving up in weight to either 154 or maybe even 160 down the line, around 147, Pacquiao's the biggest payday that he could grab. So if Pacquiao wants to fight Spence, Pacquiao also has a share of the WBC title, even though Keith Thurman is the actual champion. Pacquiao is now what the WBC considers the regular champion. So Spence, being the IBF champion at 147, can collect a WBC belt against Manny Pacquiao. He can also collect the WBC Super Championship if he fights Keith Thurman. Now, I don't think that Keith Thurman wants that fight right now. He's too soon removed from that surgery and from his first comeback fight with Josecito Lopez, which was going great until Keith Thurman got cracked and badly hurt against Lopez, hung on to survive the round, and won most of the rounds after that, although he was really in trouble during that fight. And that was probably the most vulnerable we've ever seen Keith Thurman look in his career, although he had a very close fight with Shawn Porter, a pretty close fight with Danny Garcia, and he was pretty badly hurt against Luis Collazo a few years ago. So I don't think that Thurman wants the Thurman-Spence showdown just yet. I think Pacquiao would be open to it, maybe. I mean, it's now or never, right? Pacquiao's only going to have less and less of a chance of winning the fight the older he gets. He's already 40 years old. So Pacquiao seems the type who's game for anything. So he had a why not type of attitude when being presented with the possibility of a Spence fight. So if that happens, huge opportunity for Spence and a great opportunity for Pacquiao. It's just a really scary fight for Pacquiao. I can see Spence knocking Pacquiao out, and I don't see Pacquiao being able to knock Spence out at this point of Pacquiao's career. he's only had one knockout in the past several years, like one knockout in, I believe, the past 7 or 8 years, and it was against Lucas Matisse, who was a blown up 140 fighter who really never had any business at 147. So Pacquiao doesn't carry the same knockout ability that he used to. So it's not a dangerous fight for Errol Spence. It could be an interesting matchup depending on what Manny Pacquiao's hand speed looks like against Spence, but after seeing what Spence was able to do with Garcia and how easily he was able to handle him with the jab and with his defensive prowess as well, I don't see Pacquiao being able to present much of a problem for Spence. The other big possibilities for Errol Spence would be Shawn Porter, who also has a share of the title, as well as Terence Crawford, probably the person who's most widely recognized as the second best or best fighter in the 147-pound weight class right now, along with Errol Spence. So some people will say Errol Spence is the best. The ones who aren't saying that would say that Terence Crawford is the best. So that is the best quality showdown that could take place at welterweight right now. Garcia could go down one weight class to 140, where the champions include Ivan Barichek. Relic is at 140, really good fighter. Not much of a name, but he's a growing name, and he's growing in popularity. Maurice Hooker, who just defended his title a couple weekends ago successfully, is one of the champions at 140. Jose Ramirez and Regis Prograis share their share of the 140 title. And then there's top contender Josh Taylor, who might have a bigger name than all of those champions that I just mentioned. Josh Taylor's undefeated, recently had a big win against Victor Postal, so that could be an interesting matchup for Mikey Garcia. However, I actually think that Garcia is going to go down 2 weight classes to 135, where he is still currently champion. He's still one of the title holders at 135. The other champions at 135 include Vasyl Lomachenko, who actually has 2 shares of the title. He has 2 different belts at 135, and that would be a huge showdown. Lomachenko is seen as one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the sport. He's on most people's top 3, but for promotional reasons, it doesn't seem like they could get that fight together. Vasyl Lomachenko's with Top Rank. They fight on ESPN. Mikey Garcia works with PBC, but is still kind of a free agent, so they just have to work the business out to be able to make that one happen. But it doesn't seem like there's any movement on that side just yet. I still think that Mikey Garcia beats Vasyl Lomachenko, depending on how much damage he really took against Errol Spence. That's another key factor here. This was a 12-round beatdown. It's not as bad as some of the beatdowns we've seen, and Mikey Garcia said he was actually blocking a lot of those punches up top, but Errol Spence did score a lot to the body. He really bludgeoned that body of Garcia's, and he did land a lot of shots up top, even if some of them were parried or blocked by Garcia. As he said, he blocked several of them. He still took a beating in that fight, and time will tell how much of a toll that beating is going to take on him going forward. Sometimes if the beating is bad enough, the fighter's never the same again. I don't think that that's the case here, but again, it remains to be seen. So assuming that he didn't take too bad a bludgeoning from, again, one of the most devastating punches in the sport for 12 rounds, having gone up 2 weight classes, Garcia still has some options at 135, aside from Lomachenko. Luke Campbell, not the founder of 2 Live Crew, Luther Campbell, but the boxer Luke Campbell is one of the top contenders at 135 right now, as are Floyd Mayweather's senior protege, Devin Haney. You're starting to see his name pop up and him featured more and more. You see him sitting ringside a lot, and he's kind of becoming a face in the game. Still undefeated, very, very young, and if you ask me, he hasn't had sturdy enough competition to be able to hop in the ring with some of the best of the weight class, but still undefeated, and sometimes they start to shoot these names up to the top of the division pretty quickly, and a lot of the fighters get big opportunities that their resumes don't necessarily merit. So this could be the case with Devin Haney here. I don't think Devin Haney poses any type of a problem with Mikey Garcia. I think it's too early for him, and I think that he would get hurt if he gets in the ring at this point with Garcia. A more likely scenario would be a Teofimo Lopez knockout sensation. He's another prospect, big-time prospect at 135. He seems to want to fight the best of the best. He's been calling out Vasyl Lomachenko. He's been calling out Gervonta Davis and Mikey Garcia. If Lopez seems to want to fight them all right now, I think that he is a formidable threat. Obviously has tremendous punching power and some pretty fast hands. I don't think that he's got enough experience to really deal with the top of that division. So I don't think that at this point he beats Lomachenko. We've seen Lomachenko fight a lot of hard hitters, Nicholas Walters, and just destroy them. I don't think that Lopez is ready for Lomachenko. I don't think that Lopez is yet ready for Mikey Garcia. But going forward, yeah, he's going to be a threat in the division. There's also veteran Javier Fortuna. There's Pedraza, who's still out there. I think that Mikey Garcia beats both Fortuna and Pedraza. And then there's undefeated rising sensation Gervonta Tank Davis, who is currently at 130. He's a weight class below 135 right now, but he's got every aspiration to make his way to 135 and to do damage there. And based on everything I've seen, he can do a whole lot of damage at 135. He's got one punch knockout power. He's one of the guys with one punch knockout power, as does Mikey Garcia, believe it or not, has tremendous power, especially at 135. So Gervonta Davis is going to have to kind of grow into the division. I expect him to take on 1 or 2 fights against strong contenders, but not the absolute top of the division. I think he's going to ease his way into the division like most fighters do, instead of just going for the absolute top, the way that Mikey Garcia just did at 147, trying to mess with Errol Spence in his first fight at the weight class. I think that Gervonta Davis could eventually be a champ at 135. I don't think that he can yet handle Mikey Garcia at that weight class. But the chances are, by the time Gervonta Davis is fighting at 135, I think that Garcia will have likely moved on from 135 up to 140. But if Davis wants to make that leap now and get into 135, then you will have a window of opportunity where within the next year and a half, they can make that fight happen between Tank Davis and Mikey Garcia. I would currently favor Mikey Garcia over any other fighter at 135 or 140. Not to say that he wins the fight, because stuff happens, but if I had to bet on him versus Lomachenko versus Gervonta Tank Davis, I would go with him over both. Against Teofimo Lopez, again, I would go with Mikey Garcia. I think he's got all the tools. I think that this was an unfortunate case of him doing something, trying to pull off the impossible and it not going well. But still, again, he made it the full 12 rounds. So if Errol Spence can't get that guy out of there, it's going to be a really heavy task for Davis or for Lomachenko to try to handle him. And he's got all the boxing skills in the book. He's a good defensive fighter, great jab. He's got power in both hands. He sets up his shots well. He throws a lot of decoy punches to set up the devastating power shots. He just has all the tools. And I think that he's going to bounce back from this fight extraordinarily well, assuming, again, he didn't take too much damage against Spence to where it impacts the rest of his career going forward. So those are my thoughts on Garcia versus Errol Spence and both of their paths forward. Let me know what you thought about the fight. Let me know what you think happened with both of these fighters in the near, not too distant future. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Woog. Please like and subscribe if you haven't. Peace.